Hi, welcome to Dance Uncorked podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Jean, and today I am very grateful and honored to have a really good friend of mine here. This is Gabriel of Dialects Dance Theatre in Orlando, Florida. Hi, David.
Woo, hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Thank you for being here. Um, we have some really exciting questions to kind of go over today and topics. David does a lot of really cool things when it comes to dance. He is really into Afro-Latin dancing. And we met a long time ago on some dance floors in the salsa scene in Orlando, Florida. So that's where I know David from. That's where we met. We've been dance partners. We've shared the stage together. We have traveled the country together on planes and cities. And oh man, we lived together at one point. That was really fun. We were
Pretty
roommates.
much, yeah. Pretty much,
You were the
for
best
sure.
man in my wedding. So
Yes.
that's super super exciting to have you here and just to know you in so many capacities. But your artistry is something that I've always admired. So I'm super thrilled to have you here and I can't wait to dive into some of these questions that we are going to talk about together.
I'm
But
excited. Let's get it.
before we do, we have to talk about the wine we're drinking this evening. And we're actually going to take a different route today, and we're going to talk about canned wine.
Do I have my label
We
out?
choreographed that. That was pretty good. We
Okay.
choreographed that. And let's talk about this. So this is actually a really great option for those that don't really drink a lot of wine. They like to have wine every once in a while, or this is great for grab and go. And this was actually made by the company because of that. They kind of wanted this grab and go feel. So then the can was born, canned wine. And I've had canned wine before, but it's really cool because this is really environmentally friendly too. A lot of people take this camping out here in Oregon. I do like camping with cans is way better than with bottles. There's rivers here too. So if you go on the river, this is way better and you should absolutely use cans over the bottles. So it's got a lot of benefits. But I wanted to talk about this one in particular. So this is called Underwood and we are going to drink the Pinot Noir. So
Yes,
this is
ma'am.
Oregon wine. Like this is Oregon wine, and I didn't actually realize that when David and I decided to collaborate with this beverage. But it's actually from a company called, let's see, Union Wine Company is the like overhead company, and then it's a collaborative of Underwood along with Kingsridge and Alchemist. So if you see those brands too, it's under this Union Wine Company, and it's here in Oregon. And their biggest thing is they wanted something approachable, they wanted something accessible, and they wanted something affordable. So how much did you pay for this one single can? You can buy it as a single can in the store.
Yeah, and I think at a single can, it was about $5. So kind of like getting a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Like a cheap glass of wine. Obviously, this is um, going to be a little bit more than what you're drinking in just a glass. So yeah, so about $5 right out the can. That's just by single cans, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In
Mine was
packs, it's cheaper.
mine was about $6. And I think you can on the Underwood and the Union Wine Company website, you can actually buy these in 4 packs and on like pouch
Right.
too.
Yeah.
The 4 packs, I think when you break it down, it's like $7 for a can. But this is like almost 2 glasses of wine. If you just went to a wine bar and got
Right.
your glass filled,
Mhm.
it would actually equal to almost 2 glasses. So you're basically getting 2 glasses for the price of one in this little can, which is kind of cool. So
Yeah,
it is
very good.
accessible, it's affordable. And like I said, I like the singles because if you're just not, or you can go to the store and get like multiple different kinds of cans if you wanted to try different kinds of wines and you weren't committed to
Mhm.
like one single bottle. So this was founded by a guy named Ryan Harms in the early 2000s, and he's the owner and the founder. And I'm going to shout out another female winemaker. They have a female winemaker, which is really kind of rare in the industry. But from my research and doing these podcasts, I'm finding that it's actually more like I'm seeing more female names on the rosters, which is great. So I just wanted to shout off Meredith McGough alongside her, winemaker co-pilot, Cheney Vidrine, I believe. So I just wanted to shout that out. I think that's really important for the wine industry.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And they do something, you'll see this on the back of the can too. It says #pinkies down. And
yeah, I read that. Yeah.
#pinkies down, folks. So they're not really into the elitism that sometimes wine can produce, or that some wineries even kind of further perpetuate, I guess. And it kind of goes along with their whole mission, right? Like they want something accessible and affordable. So they want it to be relatable to everyone. So they do this campaign called #pinkies down. And it's rooted in craft, but less stuffy. That's what they say. How to describe the campaign. So they're super into that. And I love that. I think that's great because wine should be enjoyed by everyone,
Absolutely.
This can was first released by this company. I don't know if they're the first ones to ever do it, but this one in particular was released in 2013 at one of the Portland festivals. And it just kind of stuck with that ever since. And then they started selling, I think you can find this in 45 states right now. So they're like a mass distribution of these cans.
Nice.
And what I like about their website is that if you actually click on, the beverage of choice, they have like an FAQ that you can click on, and it goes through some frequently asked questions about the wine in particular, but then some more generic questions about what they sell. So check that out if you'd like on the Union Wine Company website. It's pretty great. And let's see, we're supposed to taste, when we open this up, David, we're supposed to taste raspberry, cherry, and chocolate. Is that what yours says?
Yes, and I'm ready for all of that.
Okay. So let's open it up. Let's do it.
Okay. Are you drinking straight from the can? Because I also brought a glass. So what are you doing? You're doing straight from the can.
I'm going to go straight from the can.
Okay. Here we go.
This is what I would do if I was camping. So,
okay.
Oh my gosh.
Let's do it.
Okay. But you can drink from your glass if you want to, David. So David's notorious for being like fancy. And
I am not. That is such a lie.
Yeah. You love putting things in glasses. This is like a trend.
This is not true. But this is really good. Are we tasting? Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to smell it. Okay. Smells like red wine. It's got a pretty but not too vinegary. It's
like a light to medium body, kind of pretty standard, like a Pinot Noir, I feel.
I definitely get cherry notes. Like I taste that. I don't know about chocolate. Maybe like a dark chocolate.
I think when it finishes, right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it finishes, that's what it is. It's so funny because a lot of the way you see wine described a lot is the way colognes are, like scents.
Yeah.
They talk about notes and what you really see, like base notes, under notes, like, really the notes that stick out the most. And they're very complex. And wine is the same way. It's like tasting after tasting, and then taste and wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Let it go down, taste again. Right. Same thing with like colognes. Like you smell it a half an hour later. You smell it on skin, you smell it on clothes. Everything's a little different. And when it comes to organics, I think that's the way it is, because anything that's natural, when you mix them with fruits or any kind of thing that's organic and not chemically, because chemicals just have this perpetual state.
Right.
So when you smell like the cheap colognes or something, and it's just straight up like it smells the way it does from start to finish, no matter how old it is. You first work in the room. So something like soda is the same, right? You drink a soda, it's like all chemicals.
Yeah.
It's like soda tastes the same. It's the same thing. It's been a year on the shelf. And wine is quite different, right? Even with the age, the complexity, it changes. So yeah, I like a red wine every now and then. Just wine, just wine by itself. That's it.
Yeah, like that. This is the
Not even
can.
food. We're just sitting, we're
We
just
just
drinking
do
wine.
wine. This is wine and dance. Like that's
This
it.
is very, this is very accessible though, because this makes sense. I don't. You would bring a can out. I mean, listen, it might not impress, but like you go on a picnic, a little first date, you
Right?
get one can. I know they want to see the bottle, but one can, two glasses. I mean, that's about as efficient as you can get there.
It's a picnic and it's environmentally friendly. The person will know that you care about the environment and you'll recycle that can when you're done. And like
Yeah, you're checking a
it's
lot of
super.
2021 boxes.
Well,
Yeah,
this
you're
is great.
checking a
I
lot of
mean,
boxes.
this is such an Oregon thing to do, right? Because people like to go backpacking and they'll go for like weeks. They'll do that
Yes.
all summer. This is
Hmm.
this you can actually fit in your like backpack and take it with you on like long camping trips or backpacking hikes and things like that.
You're not worried about it breaking. I mean,
Nope.
this is, yeah, this is, it makes sense that this should be a thing and probably more. Well, the small box wines are definitely a thing. I've
Yes.
seen those. So I guess maybe they kind of like, okay, I think we got to cover with that because those are definitely a thing. They're pretty safe. They're cardboard. You're not worried about them so much busting, like glass or something when you put them down. So I've
Yeah.
seen those, but I was surprised that they had, and they didn't have many. When I went to buy this one, there was only, I think, three brands of wine, and then they had the sparkling kind of like things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this company, I think, had three varieties there. They had a
Yes.
rosé
I
also
think
and
I saw three too. They have a Pinot Gris and they have a rosé and then they
a
have
rosé. Yeah.
Pinot Noir. So it doesn't specify where the Pinot Noir grapes are coming from on the
Hmm.
wine can. So I don't know where in Oregon, but I'm assuming, I mean, this is a very Oregon-based company. So they're coming
Right.
from somewhere in Oregon. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Willamette Valley, just because Pinot Noir is really easily grown there. So that's kind of where my region
Mm,
is, where I'm at. So cool. Well,
okay.
cheers,
Yeah.
David, to being
Cheers.
here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for
This is
drinking
really great.
canned wine with me, David.
Yeah. This is gonna be my new thing. Just walking around the street with a
This is
can of
a
wine.
first for us. We've never shared a canned wine together.
This is great. 2021. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, thank you again for being here. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. I think that you are a fantastic artist. You're a fantastic instructor. And we've had so many amazing conversations around art and life and all the things. So I definitely wanted to bring you here to kind of share that with the people that want to listen to this. So to start us off, why don't you give us like a brief overview of your dance history, because it's very eclectic and a little bit different, way different than mine. And what are you doing now?
So started when I first started, or what got me into dance. My mother's side of the family they've always done Latin dance, more like recreational or social, but they were really big, of course, in the 70s in New York scenes, club scenes. It was a really big thing. That was like the dance competitions of its time, like go-go disco clubs and Latin and swing and all this stuff, was really prominent then. And they were really in that scene, a wild scene. We're talking about New York in the 70s. Like it's just, out of control. My mother's side of the family, the uncles, mother, they were always dancing. They were in the club scene. They were when they're having house parties or something, they would always be dancing. And I was really young at that time. Oh,
Mhm.
Latin dance, it's for the older people, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm growing up in New York and this is the 80s now, I'm growing up in the 80s in New York. And so for me, it's New York culture. And of course, I come along when hip hop is coming along. So if you're in New York, like that's your culture. And then not only that, I mean, like, you know, hip, and I think to this day, it's still very, it resonates. And, the way I like to move, or even my attitude is hip hop
Mhm.
and also ballroom. And I'm talking about like Vogue ballroom. That was really big when I first started coming up.
Yes.
And cousins of mine were they were very into like places like the Limelight. And, these clubs in New York that are infamous for like underground clubs and ballroom dancing. So all that was bubbling up. So this was, on that side, my mother's side of the family was this very over the top extra when it came to that. But it was very uniquely original. too, which is something else that I try to carry and teach my kids about dancing too. It's about, there was an authenticity there. They
Yeah.
weren't acting like that because they weren't acting a certain way because they lived a lifestyle where their attitude and their natural expressions were that because they came from where everything else, it's like crime ridden and
Right.
cold here. Like
Oh my
so
God.
their whole attitude and their persona in the dance was very much representative of where they grew up. So, but anyway, yeah, I was watching Latin dance, and then I remember a couple of friends of mine later on when I was getting older in my 20s, we were talking about going out Latin dance. They're like, you dance, don't you? Like your family dance? I'm like, yeah, I've danced in the house, but I never got formally instructed. So I started doing some salsa dancing, and I really got into it. I enjoyed it. I was starting in Tampa, and there was a school called Salsa Caliente, and it was just like a regular. They would do 2 classes a week or something like that in this kind of little club, and it was just for hobbyists. People just go and dance every week. But I would see people social dance. I thought it was a great thing. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. And then I started taking it a little bit more seriously. And at the time, I was just kind of doing it part way because before that I used to box. So I was boxing and competing in boxing for a long time. And one of the things I always loved about boxing too, some of my favorite boxers always had great entrances.
Oh,
Great ring entrances like music,
yeah.
fireworks, and a lot of them would dance. One of my
Oh,
favorite boxers named Prince Nassim Ahmed, and this was in the 90s. He would come in. He was a British fighter, Arab British fighter, and he would come in to dance hall reggae music, like phenomenal. Dance hall reggae music, super big in the UK,
mhm.
and in Brooklyn, where I'm from, it's super big because it's Jamaicans all around us. We're all
Right.
Caribbean. So dance hall music was one of my first loves. Hip hop, dance hall music. These are one of my first loves. So I love dancing to dance hall. I love all that stuff. And I just saw like I loved boxing. I used to watch this, and then more and more, I just used to love. I love the artistry, the footwork, the movement of martial arts a lot. I used to get into like a lot of different martial arts, and I could see the parallels. Like
Yeah.
you could see good fighters would probably be good dancers.
Right.
And things like that. Just footwork. You're talking about spatial awareness.
Yeah.
Like balance. Like there's just a lot of
Like dynamism, like just really dynamic movement too, right?
yes, very specific. And each movement is purposeful, and they're very big about not no wasting movements because
Yeah.
it's an endurance and conditioning thing. Which is very dance like too. You have to really think your breath control, things like that. And so I was doing both of these things, and then more and more I got into dance. I was doing martial arts less, and then decided to do dance more. So I went. I started taking class, of course, where I first met you at Universal Mambo Dance Academy, which was in Orlando, Florida, instructed by, owned and directed by Eric Baez, who
Shout
was
out
a
to
former
Eric.
Eddie Torres. Shout out Eric Baez, former Eddie Torres dancer. So this was like New York salsa style, as authentic as you could get to that New York salsa style.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, that's where I met you. A lot of great friends that I have to this day. And I got into it more and more, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed not just the partner work of it, but I started enjoying the stylistically, and I started enjoying parts of the music. And of course, friends like Anthony, your husband,
Yeah.
used to, talk to me about the music and the origins of the music. He said, "Oh, if you like this music, you should really listen to this, but listen to these drum patterns, and listen to these melodies and these harmonies. It comes from here." And I get you introduced to Afro-Cuban music first, and I'm loving it. And I want to learn how to dance it more, and get into that. Um, and so, it's something that really interests me. So I'm loving salsa. I'm loving, Afro-Cuban. I'm from New York originally, but I'm in Florida at this time, because of school. I came down. So I want to do more. I go back to New York to live 6 months again to train. And what I thought was going to be mostly salsa. Great instructors up there. I'm going to train in salsa. I'm going to do more salsa. And then as I was learning about body movements and mechanics of certain Latin dance, I really started getting more and more to that Afro-Cuban side that salsa music presents, and salsa dance can kind of, that exists in salsa dance. So I say, well, let me do Afro-Cuban, and I'm taking some workshops from a few instructors, and one of my friends comes up and says, if you really want to learn Afro-Cuban, you should go to this instructor. He's out in Queens now, and his name is Felix Insua. So I said, okay, let me go. And for me, I'm thinking, well, this is going to be all I know about Latin dance is what I know of salsa. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be like salsa dancing, and I'm going to learn some body movement. I'm going to learn my salsa. This is going to be good. I'm going to really look good with my salsa. Like, I'm just going to do this Afro-Cuban. I'm going to use it so I can look like a better salsa dancer, and I can be very unique. And then when I went over, this was an experience I couldn't, really anticipate, because there was nothing that resembled what I was doing in salsa.
Mhm.
Afro-Cuban dance it's folkloric. It comes from the African ceremony. It's very like steeped and rooted in deep tradition, and salsa is very secular, and it's just very fun. It's social. So there's a certain amount of seriousness and intensity that comes with that kind of dance that's of ceremony and folkloric nature. So when I got there, I mean, it must have been my first day. I can't remember, my first or second day. This teacher he was just ripping me apart. He was just saying how, he just telling me, calling out my lack of focus, and how kind of indignant I was, like, how much respect I lacked for the dance, or I wasn't paying attention to the right things, or it's like he read me already, because honestly, I was just learning Afro-Cuban so I could look better at salsa dancing.
Ah,
Like, I just wanted to get these movements and stuff
yeah.
to spice up my salsa dancing. And he saw that right away. Like,
He
I
was
didn't even
like,
have to say a
no.
word. Oh yeah, he just read me, like right from the beginning. And I was like, like, what is this? What, I didn't come here to, I came here to have like a relatively good time. And I
I didn't
remember
know I was gonna get insulted today. Cool.
just killing me.
Yeah.
And I left there so mad. Like, I just left there mad, and like just on the verge of like, I was just so upset, inside. And I was just confused, and I was it was like a rebirth. I'm like, oh my God, I'm questioning like who I am, and
Wow.
how I take things, and am I a serious person at all? Am I just Do I take advantage of things or people? All this is one class, all these questions have sprung up. I don't know. He just really
Wow.
dug into me, which he did that apparently to a lot of people. So a lot of people never came back. It's just it was a tough thing. So I came back to kind of prove a point. Like, I'm not going to leave dejected like that. And the more I came back, I just understood by looking at the other dancers how they embodied this music and this tradition, and I understood that there was that I came to that conclusion, like, oh, we're just kind of vehicles here, and we're keeping an art alive. Like, we're not ever more important to that. Like, we'll be gone, especially when you think about African dance and tradition that survived the diaspora. It's like we're a drop in it. Like, it doesn't matter. It survived this. There's nothing that's going to no one person that's good. It's going to matter more than the art. And I was like, oh, I get it. It's not about what I get out of the art. I need to put a whole lot in, and it's not going to be I don't know. You learn about a ceremony dance, and it's not meant, or it's not about being on a stage. And then you agree to those terms, and you're
Mm.
like, oh, I'm serving a role in this production of a dance, and it might be minute, but how I portray it's going to be very, very important,
Mhm.
and it's not going to be about me because I'm taking on a character. It's all about if that character is portrayed well in that dance,
Mhm.
and then you've done your job. If they can see the character and not see you, so you're basically kind of invisible the whole thing. You're carrying on legacy. You're carrying on spirits. All this stuff that's not about you. It's about bigger things than you. And then I understood, like, okay, why am I dancing, or what's going to be my role in dance? And it was
Mhm.
hard for me to just do salsa the same anymore again, or just to participate in it, because I was like, oh, it just for me personally,
Mhm.
like, I just didn't get the same feeling. The instructor didn't talk to me the same way. It wasn't like I was part of something bigger. It was just something fun, which salsa is supposed to be fun and social.
But
and
it
it has
wasn't
its place. It's wonderful.
right. It was life
Yeah.
altering what you went through with Afro-Cuban like dancing in
Yeah,
that
it was life
particular
altering.
class, and that was life altering. I remember when you came back, and I was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
you've shifted, and it was all because of that.
Yeah, and everything had to be more, a little bit more serious then. And the way I looked at things, I was like, oh, I don't think I want to just have fun dancing anymore. Like I want to be part of something really grand. And I want to have that feeling that those people had when they were just dancing in the ceremonies and dancing for something bigger than themselves. And when I had those feelings, I was like, oh, I get it. It's much better than whatever you do for yourself. So, it really transcended that line, and it made art something a little bit different to me. And so I went up there, like I said, to do more salsa, and I kept doing some. But once I started Afro-Cuban, and once I was with this teacher, I knew this was something different. And he was just an intense man. I mean, he's a legendary instructor from Cuba, and in the United States. And I understood why. He was cut from a different cloth. And he was in his 60s, and he was just such in great shape, and he was such a presence, and he dedicated his life to this, and this was really serious to him, and anybody that was around him doing it, they had to kind of take on that moniker. So he was really invested in me a lot,
Mm.
and I could tell he really cared. But it never got easier. That was the thing. There was no point in that class that I started feeling like, oh, I'm getting this and it's getting better. I mean, every class was this arduous task, and like this obstacle course of just him throwing things at you, you learning technique, and him questioning everything that you do to every step. He asked me if I knew how to walk, or things like that. He just every step of the way, he wanted to dig into your personality, your mentality, your spirituality. He wanted to know why you were doing this, what you did, and what kind of message are you sending, what do you live for,
Mhm.
as if like, okay, we're going to decide um, if you're kind of worthy enough to do this stuff. Not so much in those words, but more so like, I'm going to test why you're here. And if you're here
Mhm.
for the right reasons, you'll still be here. And if you're not, you'll just leave. And a lot of people did. And for a lot of us that stayed, for the few that stayed, I just felt like we got an experience that most people don't get a chance to get, and to have a mentorship with an instructor that most people aren't fortunate enough to have. I guess some great, probably very old school traditional, maybe ballet instructors or something like that, um, when they have muses, or like people that they mentor, it's
Mhm.
probably feels the same. I mean, never gets really easier as being the student. It keeps getting harder and harder and harder. But um but at the same time, you stay rewarded, and then you kind of seek that, because you want to be part of something that's serious. You want to have your fun too, of course, but when you talk about your life's work in art, you start saying there's some more gravity here, especially when
Mhm.
you're participating in something in that. So once I started with him and in Afro-Cuban, that's what led me he was a fusion dancer by nature. He loved doing other things like flamenco. Of course, he was classically trained. Well, a little bit about Felix Insua,
Oh.
my instructor. He's
Mhm.
from Cuba, of course. Cubans, the Soviet bloc. He was classically trained in ballet since he was a child, and with folkloric dance. And this is one of the
Mhm.
few places in the world that have that.
Wow.
Russia has it too. They do
Mhm.
folkloric dance and they do ballet.
Yeah.
So Cuba and Russia are just so similar in so many events. But he taught like that, and the way people describe Russian ballet mistresses and instructors,
Yeah.
old school, I would say it's pretty much the similar way. It's trial by fire all the way, every class. It's everything that you can give all the time, and there was no time for not paying attention, or not being focused, or not thinking exactly what you do. So I remember, before him, I'd walk into classes, just kind of get ready. Okay, what are we going to do today? And after him, it's like walk into class, stare directly in the direction, and just stay there to get every word and every movement
No,
possible, because it came so fast, and it
yeah.
came, and he expected you to get it and be focused. So like everything was just completely blocked out. You were completely absorbed.
Wow.
And it makes sense when you're doing something ceremonial, because there's no, you don't have time or space to be you in that context
Right.
if you're
Well,
playing a character.
it's not something you just walk into and you're like, okay, let's do it. Like it's not that, right? Like it's a
It's
ceremony
not that.
that is
It's not that.
religious, spiritual, ancestral, like that's deep. Like you got to go somewhere to get there. And it takes a lot
Yes.
to get there. A lot of focus.
Yes. And people teach Afro-Cuban dance, of course, and they teach it not with that same context, but he wasn't one of those teachers. He taught it very fundamentally the way it was. And we went to ceremonies like feast days for the orishas and stuff like that. So this was like part of the life. This was the lifestyle. It wasn't just like I saw him in the studio. I saw him at ceremonies, and we would go to events and rumbas and different places in the city. And then you would see the dancing there. And when people dance at ceremonies, when they do orisha dances at ceremonies, it's not like seeing the dance on stage at a production or a workshop or something like that. When they dance in ceremonies, I mean, this is when they talk about that higher place, that kind of possession, the things that, Catherine Dunham has talked about when she was in Haiti and those traditions and stuff like that. When you're in those rooms, you're like, oh, this is way different. This is and then you start to understand, okay, where do you find yourself, as far as like how where are you participating in that? Are you going to do strictly ceremonial? Do you want to use the movements for other things? And I think my teacher, being he enjoyed the fusion of it, and he liked that it can be brought to other audiences, and he thought it was bigger than just the people that it could not, I would say, not say bigger, but he thought it, movement and stuff can transcend just what's happening in the ceremonies, and it can morph into different things, and other people that don't necessarily practice those religious practices can also gain a lot from that. And that's when he passed away, unfortunately. um, that's when I began what I wanted to do, because before that I was just planning on moving back to New York and being part of his company and
Right.
just studying under him and maybe just taking over one day if that was possible.
Yeah.
But when he passed away, I just thought, like, if I can just pass an ounce of this
Mm.
on, or if I could just, if I could just continue that legacy. He wanted to do more fusion. He wanted things to come together. He loved a lot of different styles of music, as do Cubans do. I mean, they just, it's such an artistic melting pot, in
Yeah.
Cuba. I mean, they do wonderful contemporary dance. They do wonderful ballet dance. They do wonderful
Mhm.
jazz.
Yeah.
They do hip hop. They do so much different types of music, classical music. It is fusion by nature, and I think it's beautiful. And I think the African lineage
Mhm.
is something that's a lot of times not explored in all the dances and music styles that we have today. And so I thought it would be important to continue that, and that's where I found myself before I started teaching and deciding to take on that responsibility of teaching Afro-Latin dance.
So for Afro-Latin dance, based on your experience, like how would you define that for somebody who maybe would come to your class for the first time, or somebody who's never heard of Afro-Latin dance, or maybe who's heard of Afro-Cuban but is kind of confused about the fusion of the two? Like how do you define Afro-Latin dance?
Yeah, it would be impossible to say I do Afro-Latin dance and this is the way Afro-Latin dance should look.
Right.
Because you're talking about Afro-Latin culture. It would be the same thing in African dance. It's like, why do African dance? I'm like, okay, well, that's a continent. So like, what are we talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, so, what kind of style do you do?
Right.
So Afro-Latin is the same because there's Afri, this is basically, we're talking about places where there's been fusions of African and Latin cultures, mostly due to that slave trade, of course.
Mhm.
So all through the Caribbean, and then South America mostly. But
Yeah.
you could also say Afro-Latin in Europe if you're talking about Spaniards and Africans. If we're
Mhm.
talking about Moors, North African, um, um, Italians,
Right.
Spaniards. Flamenco, you could probably say, is an Afro-Latin dance.
Yeah.
The way they sing. It's not that it's presented more of a Spanish dance and a gypsy dance. But if you listen to Arabic drum patterns and then singing, it's going to feel the same as flamenco does, and Moors of that time, the way they sung and the way they played music patterns, it's the same thing. So, but a lot of times we're talking about Afro-Latin, we're talking about through the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Cuba mostly, because Cuba was able to keep African tradition better than any intact, better than any other country in the Western world. So Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and then you're talking about South America also, Brazil, Colombia, Peru. I mean, a lot of, even in Mexico, they have there's a lot. And
Yeah.
so the thing that's different about all these islands now, is that now that we have also the native Indians that were there, the Taínos, which were Arawak Indians, I believe. And so now there's a mixture there, just a little bit, like a culture, because unfortunately a lot of the indigenous people get wiped out, but in the Caribbean they stayed a little bit longer than, say, than America, so there was a little bit more mixture. So Afro-Latin culture is in several countries. So they each have a little bit different style of Afro-Latin music and Afro-Latin dances dances and music that came together because specifically of the African and Spaniard, that mixture right there, as well as some of the indigenous. So there's a lot of different Afro-Latin cultures. So for me, a lot of what I do has to do with more what happens in the Afro-Caribbean kind of section of that, what's happening in Cuba with the Orisha dances, and also Puerto Rico has similar bomba and plena. Dominican Republic does have also a lot of those types of things, as does Haiti, of course. So that's what more important in Brazil. What happens in Brazil, you will see things that look very, very similar to the stuff that I do also, because the Brazilians also came from that same tradition. The Africans in Brazil came from the same tradition as the Africans in Cuba, which was the Yoruba people, which is Nigeria, the Gold Coast, Dahomey, Benin, all that area, same area. So the religious practices in West Africa, in Cuba and Brazil, are almost identical. I mean, just almost identical. And these are just thousands of miles apart, and they're almost identical.
Wow.
But there's also places in is it Guinea? I can't remember where. In South America, where they've had where people from Ghana have traveled to these remote islands in South America, and these tribes have stayed like kind of untouched since they were brought from Africa. So we're talking about hundreds of years of separation, and they still speak the same dialect. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Like someone from Ghana could come and speak to them, like they never learned it. This is unheard of in America because everybody was separated. Tribes were mixed, and so much of the tradition was stomped out, and that's really, really unfortunate. But without a big history lesson, it's so the style that I teach has a lot to do with that Afro-Cuban tradition, rumba, Orisha dances, palo dance, conga dance, all that stuff. And then you will see things like Afro-Brazilian, Afro-Puerto Rican, flamenco, things like that, and West African dance pop up too. So that's kind of what that's what I've kind of limited to, because there's just so much vocabulary out there. You can just keep going, because it's literally, a lot of countries.
It's one of
millions of people.
Kind of like those undefinable art forms, right? Like, you can break it down like you just did, but there's also, because it is so prevalent in so many countries because of history, like history has made it travel, and the things that have happened in history. So, wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. Like, because I think that's missing in a lot of, especially like dance education, right? And I think what I really love, and I think that's super unique about you, is that you've had a lot of success actually in the private sector.
Yes.
You have had your own adult company, you've worked with theater companies, like you're really into like different kinds of media too. Like it's not just dance. I've at least that's, you just kind of dabbled in a lot of stuff. But you've had quite a bit of success, especially in the last couple years, in private dance studios in Orlando. which is really notable because your genre or style or your art form is not really a prominent class in,
No.
especially in the core classes of students that are training. But you've kind of flipped the script a little bit, especially at this one particular studio. And I would just love to hear more about that journey into private sector, and if you actually ran into any challenges, or how was that journey for you? Because I doubt that it didn't come with like some bumps, because private sector training is very, very Eurocentric. So to have you
Yes.
come in and all of a sudden, and I mean, I'm just watching over the last couple of years, like from afar, but like you are teaching multiple classes to young people
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
their tights and whatever, but like,
Hmm.
so it's part of their training. And I'm like, you are breaking ground here. So tell me about that journey into the private sector, and if you ran into any challenges along the way.
Yeah. Well, let me show. I actually just found this in my. I was going through a bunch of stuff today, and I was like, "Oh, how crazy! It's found this." So, how did I get first? When I started teaching, I was saying, well, most likely people of Latin descent are going to like this, or
Mhm.
maybe African descent, that kind of thing. Maybe people that those cultures. So Latin dance studios. Let me start teaching in Latin dance studios. And but again, they more like I was talking about in my beginning days, they more wanted salsa, things like that, and
Mhm.
they didn't want to get into this kind of serious form of dance, especially not as an adult. And I can understand that because it's really hard. I mean, how hard is it to start an adults beginners modern class anywhere in the world? I mean, it's tough, in the United States, I should say.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's tough. That's not something that you're just going to pick up and start doing. And most people want to do. They would do adult ballet or something like that because they know
Right.
fitness and they might be comfortable with that. So I wanted to teach in Latin studio. So it wasn't going over well. And I was like, no, this is serious. I need to, I need to branch out. I feel like I need to do in different places. So I was having some conversations with one Lindsay Jean, and she was telling me about an event that was happening in Orlando, and it's called National Dance Day. And
Yay.
this was
Oh my God.
this was this was July 26, 2014, I believe. This
Yeah.
was in 2014.
Hmm.
Lindsay told me, one and only Lindsay, host of this podcast, said, you should speak to this woman about doing National Dance Day, Holly Harris. And I think there's room for you to do a class. Just send her an email because, do you want to branch out? This would be a good opportunity to just put it in front of more people. You told me, who knows, like who knows what's going to happen. But I think you should try to do it. It was happening at the Orlando Ballet. So I wrote Holly an email. I said, I do Afro-Latin dance. She probably didn't have any idea what it was, but she said, okay, that
Right.
sounds good. We have a slot open. So I taught at National Dance Day.
Hmm.
And at National Dance Day, I met people in modern dance. I met people from jazz, from jazz companies here, from contemporary companies, and I started making some friendships.
Hmm.
And they took to what I had to offer so much quicker than people from Latin dance studios. So they
Interesting.
were really, really into it. They
Wow.
were into it. And so I made all these connections. And someone from there, I was talking to, uh, God, it's so hard to remember now the lineage, but
Yeah.
from there, I
Wow.
got an invitation to perform at something, the Dance Happy Project, which was an event that was being thrown to for a charity organization, and then so I had some of my company members perform there. And at that job, at from there, the director of the Center for Contemporary Dance saw what I did and emailed me about doing classes there over the summer. So this was, they taught kids there. This was, I mean, it was open to adults too, but they started at kids. This was now more of like a conservatory type program I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
So it was more of a classical, people there were going classically trained. They had a ballet, kind of a ballet conservatory there, and they had great teachers. Like you were there at the time taking class with Dawn Branch. Shout out Dawn Branch.
What up, Dawn?
Who
Deep.
Dawn, who become one of my um, uh, mentors as well. And so they offered me a summer class for like 8 weeks. I did it. First day we had no one there, and it gets scary. Second week we had maybe 2 kids. And here's one of the challenges right off the bat. So one of the parents and comes and asks me, well, what does this dance come from? And I said, well, a lot of West African traditions that kind of morphed throughout history through the Caribbean. And, we have this beautiful fusion that comes from a lot of like African mythology and ceremony. And she goes, whoa, 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 whoa. You mean like religious stuff? Because, we because we really devout about our religion. So I'm not sure we'll be comfortable learning that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, ooh, there was a big red flag there.
Yeah.
Right. Because the presentation of it, like, what are we talking about here? And I think what I had to assure them understand is that this is like understanding different cultures, or to understand different cultures, you don't necessarily have to devote yourself to every single practice that they do, or even agree with everything that that they say, or that so this wasn't about trying to transcend or bring a religious practice over. This was bringing movement that happened to be featured in their ceremonies over, and what we can learn from those movements. But you got to understand, like, most dances, most moves at some point in their lifetime come from some kind of tradition or ceremony that might not be just native to us. We're getting it from somewhere else. It's like,
even
well, I don't
ballet.
like
Even ballet.
Yeah.
It's old court dances, in which were old folklore dances from certain areas. Like, it's so full circle, and it's all the same. Like, when you break it down.
It's so full circle. Yeah. So it's not like, well, I don't agree with this country's politics, so I don't really want to do their dances. You really limit yourself when you do that. So I had to kind of understand that the way I was coming at it was going to be very much that it had to be in the context of teaching movements and stuff like that. But you could still pass on so much of the message without talking about the religious aspects of it, because it wasn't that it was part of my religious practices either, per se.
Right.
I just, much like Catherine Dunham, this is how I learned it. I went to ceremonies, and she did the same thing in Haiti. And this is how you learned it the best and how you learned it most traditionally. So
go to the source,
Yeah, so we go to the source. So eventually, more parents kind of came around, and there's 2 or 3 people, 3 or 4. And in a couple of weeks, we had a pretty nice sized class, maybe 7 or 8 people, which is pretty good for a new genre. And then they asked me to teach for the whole year, teach part of their semester. So this was great. I'm part of the semester. But the class was only one class, and it was ages 8 to adult or something like that, like 9 to adult, whatever it is. It's really hard to get into curriculum when you're teaching one class, 9 to adult. And so the problem is that a lot of the African classes are taught like this. They're taught just as a workshop, or without like staggered tiers of techniques. So it's really hard. People don't really take it seriously like they do classical ballet, where you might have 7 levels at a school, conservatively. So that's what was happening. I had one class, and then I knew it wasn't going to be enough either. I knew I needed to break up. I need to break up levels. I need to break up age groups. This is how we would make this standardized. How do I bring it into the American dance studio? You got to learn the rules of it. You got to understand how you present it academically, why it's going to be, why it's going to be appreciated and taken. How do these dancers learn? That's the way they need to learn. So how do I break it down? So I did really researched about kind of academic principles, teaching principles, right? Pedagogy, like all these things. How do I disseminate all this information in a way that these dancers can appreciate it, and it helps them learn, along with all their other dances? So I said I needed more levels. So there was a new dance studio opening called Skyra Performing Arts Academy. It was a film and dance academy. And some of the parents said that were leaving because this Center for Contemporary Dance, they wound up closing, shortly after they were kind of in the process and had these kind of ups and downs. So some parents were going to another studio and they said, listen, this dance studio is opening. We're telling the directors about you, and just give them a call and see, here's the ad for the job. Give them a call and
So
see,
at that point, you
interview for it.
like you had a team behind you at that point. It was the parents of those
Yes, I had parents. Yes,
and other colleagues,
parents from
I'm
the.
sure, and like teachers
Mhm.
and friends in the entertainment like community there and the dance community. But that was I
Yes,
think that's a pivoting point too, also to note, like when you have a gang of parents behind you, like you can do anything. Like that
big
right
deal.
there is the ticket. So those looking to start something new in a studio, get your parents like wrapped up, because they will be the ones that will carry you through, just because they believe in you. Like they believe in what you do and they believe in what you're doing for their children. They're seeing the notable differences. So that's the moment you got your parent gang, and
Yeah,
they
the parent gang,
carried you over.
parent gang all day. Like when you build bonds with the family, and listen, it's
Yeah.
part of the dance tradition. In this type of dance,
Right.
you care about the kids and you talk to them more than just
Everybody has
about
a
dance.
role. Yeah, everybody
Yes,
has a
you
role.
talk to the parents and you see how they're doing, and that's part of what I learned about this dance is that it's more of that family aspect. I just
Yeah.
don't, you're just not a number to me. I care about all my kids.
Yeah.
I have some of my first students from, you know, this is 5, 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Now they're like, 16 years old. I have those students still, I'm still in contact with them, even if they went to other schools,
Yeah.
but I still have them that they still followed me and come with me, this many years later, and they're like young adults and the kids
Yeah.
going to college. And this is amazing that it's had that. I'm still close to their parents, and I still do it to this day. I show up to their school stuff, like, you build these family connections,
You
and
sure
when
do.
it's there, when you don't realize it, I mean, they just come through. So this Skyra studio became a big thing. I mean, you wouldn't know it from the outset because they didn't even have a building yet. We were in a hotel convention like ballrooms, that
Yeah.
was small carpeted areas.
Yeah.
That's where we taught our summer program. They hired me. They said, well, what is it that you do? And what do you think, why would our kids benefit? And I'm kind of laying out my curriculum. They're like, okay, let's do it. And there's no Afro-Latin dance curriculum in anywhere that I know. Like, not
Right.
here. It's not an American thing. So they said, I think we want to make this part of curriculum. I was like, well, is this just going to be like one of those supportive classes that you put at the end of the day? Like, I don't want to do that anymore. And they kind of guaranteed that they would make it part of the curriculum. And they did. They held on to that promise. And because listen, you can't blame people for not wanting to take a chance. You have to run a business, you have to make money. Like, why would parents sign up for something they have no idea of what it is? Like, they literally have no idea. And then you ask them to sign up for ballet. Now, let's talk about what's most popular. Ballet, of course, but not only ballet, it's variations, it's point, right? It's conditioning, it's partnering. So they're doing 6 ballet classes, contemporary, of course, lyrical, jazz,
Yeah.
tap, hip hop. Okay, so now we're going all the way down, and then you're asking them to fit another class, or maybe they're taking one of my class instead of someone else's class.
Right.
How do they decide to put money on that if they have no idea what it is? Well, when you start something, anybody that's trying to break a genre, I got loads of information for you. I could help, like,
No.
hopefully it could help you. If you're trying to break a genre, it is not easy. You
Mm-mm.
better be dedicated. If you're the first one to do it, everything that you do, every step, every class that you teach is an audition for years.
Yeah.
Every single class, it has to be notable. Like, something has to happen that moves people every single
An
time.
audition for
Because when it's just
you,
something new,
right? Like your
what's that?
students are auditioning you, right? Not the
They're
other way
auditioning
around.
me. Yeah, no, it's an audition. That's what I'm saying. If you're breaking a genre, you are on audition
Yeah.
time for years to come, because any little thing that's like, oh, like, some people teach a contemporary class, they just phone it in sometimes. I'm like, oh, well,
Mhm.
whatever. They'll put a combination together, whatever. But you could phone it in, and they're like, it's fine because it's an established genre. people know they have to take it. When people think like yours, they can, it's a supplemental, they don't have to take it. Let me tell you something. They will jump off that boat quick if they're not getting exactly what they want. If the parents don't see the returns, if they don't see something that is really evident that's helping their kids, you were the last one in. That means you're the first one out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you have no tenure there. So every class that I taught, something had to resonate. Every time that I presented something, it had to be good, you know. And that was it. Even the first year, I had only two classes. Only two classes. I had two classes, two different age groups, big spans. Like 7 to like 12-year-olds and 13 to 17 or something like that. I had maybe 11 kids total in both classes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next year it gets bigger. So we're in year 4 now. Yeah, year 4. Year 4, and so I have over 55 kids enrolled in my classes.
Your
So
videos are
it's
packed.
11. They're packed.
Like
So
I
from
love
that,
following you on social media because here's what I see. I see a lot of the same, like you're building relationships with the same dancers and they're taking you year after year. And they're building their technique in your art form also, which is really cool to see from afar. But then I'm seeing so many new faces and they range. They're like teeny tiny little babes all the way to like teenagers in those 16, 17, those that are kind of on their way out of the studio life, for example. Like you have a range of different kinds of students, and I've seen the growth even just watching you on social media, and it's really like I'm so happy for you because that I
I,
know that was not easy to build. Like you built that from the ground up, and it was not easy to do.
yeah,
So
well, I
hats
appreciate it.
off
I appreciate it, and
to you.
thank you so much. And I appreciate, of course, I appreciate what you did because you were telling me that you were basically nudging me to different places, like kind of you might want to expose yourself to ballet people, and you were telling me I might want to expose myself to contemporary dance and modern dance people. Maybe it's going to resonate. Of course,
Never
you were
know.
telling me all that stuff early, so I wouldn't have seen it probably. I just thought they wouldn't be into it. It was just so foolish of me, and these stereotyping other people or thinking they would stereotype me too, which has happened to some extent.
Yeah.
But at the core of it, they want to see dance. They want to see execution, like they want to see a perform. They want to see results. So now I have ages 7, and I have 5 different levels up to ages 19, and they cover a wide variety of different techniques. And I had to be really tight about what I'm teaching, and the end of the year results had to really show. And I got to do a few competitions, and competitions are mostly they're contemporary. There's 150 contemporary numbers out of 160 pieces. So there's no room for that. And if you have a new genre and you go to a competition, guess what? You better win. It's not fair. It's not.
I remember
But
you,
there's
I think you
very little.
called me when it was around that time you did your first competitive piece. Cause you were
Yes.
like, Lindsay, I'm doing
Yeah.
competition dance. I was like, oh, let me sit you down here and tell you like
Yeah.
how that goes. Cause that's different.
Yeah.
Like that's a whole different beast, even within the private sector. So you were stepping into, you've broken that boundary too. Like you've just totally like crossed the line. You were like, that's nice, and just kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was one of those things. I'm like, how are they going to score this? This is not going to
Right.
be. Well, let's just put it out there. Yeah, and you better win or something like that too. And even if you do win, let me tell you something. It's hard to move a ship like a cruiser, like
Yeah.
it's hard to move the world off of a genre of dance. So even when you do win, people are still programmed. They want to do contemporary dance. But it was important for me to know, just because like even the can my what I do in my art, can it transcend even just the most novice of viewers? That was important to me too. I talked to a guy from artistic director from Cirque du Soleil about, it's like Cirque du Soleil, just everybody likes it. It's like people of all genres, socioeconomic, the ethnicity, they just love it.
Yeah.
And it's just like how do you do it? And he was like, it's hard to say how you do it per se, but he said, I will say this: put your art where it isn't at the current moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that made sense. So that was one of the things. My art is not in competitions.
Yeah.
Okay. let's put in competitions, which was a thing. And I realized, competition is just what it is. It's not a very, it's not pertinent, it's not about, well, you have to be a competition. I'm not like, I'm not really about that as much, but it was just important from the standpoint of like, it can transcend those kind of boundaries too. So that's good to know. And sometimes it's good for the parents to know and the students to know too, because we live in a society of social acceptance, and people want to feel like, okay, what I do resonates with what I perform. It's going to be accepted. Can it get me work? So that was important. And Skyra, as far as um, has meant so much to me, because it allowed me to develop a curriculum that I couldn't have developed if I didn't have multiple tiers of levels to teach, because you wouldn't get a specific curriculum. Then you would just kind of know that you're just teaching in 2 different blocks and everything's going to have to fit in there. But when you have 5 or 6 different blocks, and all of a sudden you need to be very specific, very nuanced about what you do, how you approach it, and this be very exact. So it's an audition, man. Now I have 5 tiers. It's an audition from 5 different tiers. It does not stop. You're not going to have any rest when you're trying to break a genre. You have to be about it, and everything else just needs to be very, very secondary. It is no joke to really do something that hasn't been done in that capacity in a certain thing, and it's nonstop, and you got to keep working on it. But I just knew that it would transcend. I got that from my instructor. I understood. No, this will work. This is important to know. So in my mind, I just always knew it. This would be important to know. But then I had to find out that other part about it. Oh, well, just because I know doesn't mean they do. You better know how to speak your language. You better understand how to deliver this information. You better understand how to please students, parents, and your studio owners.
Yeah.
And then work with a lot of people. So I have worked on projects on the side for free for years. Thousands of hours of my life have been about working with people, studying under them, just because they've worked in this sector and I haven't.
Right.
And I needed to know the language. I needed to know the economy of it. I needed to know, what was appreciated, what was not. Trim the fat. Like, what do we need, and what can you do without? If you have 5 minutes to talk about your dance, what are you going to say? If you have a presentation for one time to show someone what your dance is about, what are the parts? What should you show? So I've been doing so much in as far as media, theatrical production, acting, filming, directing, of choreographing, stage production, stage management, because I had to, because you have to be a one person machine and just create. If you just need to create content. I know what it is. I'm totally outmanned here. So I need to take it on. It's like, you want to do this or not? Because we could stand around and complain about, like, you're out, you don't have enough and this should be appreciated and people should, or you just need to go ahead and do it. So I just did. And the private sector is unforgiving, they don't need you. They don't need you. Well, like, literally, and I know that.
Yeah, it's and I've thought about this too, just in my like pushing of curriculum. I like jazz and tap and hip hop and like dances of the vernacular. Like I'm trying to shift that paradigm every day of my teaching life, right? To equalize it against the Eurocentric art forms, because I think it's really important for training, but it's a hard paradigm to shift, and it is it's hard because private sector, there's a lot less time, right? Higher education and other things, private dance companies, they have a lot more time to sit around. And I mean, I don't say this like, not that they're not hardworking and like they're not really like rigorous.
Yeah, of course.
It's just that they have more space to like have conversations and like talk about things, whereas like dance studio is like on a clock, like it's this, and then it's also math too. Like in that clock, parents are paying for particular things, so you need to deliver that in order for them to
deliver
get money's worth, and like
gotta deliver.
It's also a product. So like it's crazy, the private sector and all the little things, the details and the nuances, like you were saying, that go into making it successful, and it can tip very quickly, like one way or the other.
quickly. It's you are on a thin rope,
Yeah,
and uh, and you got to accept it. You got to be like, hey, you got to have this much time to rehearse. I mean, that's all we can give you, but you better still. Oh, okay, well, that's you're going to be fit in where you can be fit in. You're going to, and you're not going to because you're trying to break something.
yeah,
You have to be, you have to excel so much further than something's established. You really have to do much better because you're trying to prove that you deserve those kind of that standing to be in that same conversation. So man, yeah, the private sector is very, and I see why a lot of people don't like, when you see there's not a lot of African dance or other folkloric dance because, well, I'm in year 6, like trying to break it, like it's not a
right.
well, I
Well,
mean, I actually started like 8 or 9 years ago in
yeah,
2012 when I started teaching with some of the Latin dance studios.
yeah,
So you're talking about when you're getting into like year 10 or something like that, you've already been doing it and you're still kind of pushing uphill. And let me tell you, not only does it have to be good, but we're talking about other life things. We're talking about you can't get sick and start
right.
missing classes
Because who's gonna
because
sub for you?
you're just gonna sub. And then how long until you're out of the studio? Like you can't take vacations. You can't
Right,
because it's only you. There is nothing. You go in hardcore, and that's why is it so hard to get other genres to get something to get your foot in with any kind of artistic genre,
right,
anything. It's because look what you know how hard, especially if there's not 100 of you doing it. You know what I'm saying? It is so impossibly hard that I understand why people just kind of say, okay, we do African workshops here, or we do Latin workshops here and there, and they're not even part of the mainstream thing because it has to be relentless and you just have to know. So it's been amazing to go from that and then to be at Skyra and be so appreciated there. And then to the point where other dance studios are like, hey, we want to bring Afro-Latin programs. So getting job offers to different places, but I'm with Scott now. So like, and I
right.
like that. But just the fact that people are offering and to know that, oh, when there's more instructors, there will be Latin dance curriculum in more studios.